So, I have kind of a weird relationship with The Simpsons movie. For many old school fans who really grew up with the show every step of the way, it represents the last gasp of anything resembling the show in its golden age. Or maybe they wouldn't even give it that, and just say it was a disappointment that came out years after the show started its long, seemingly never-ending downward spiral. But for me, The Simpsons movie is something very different. It came out when I was 14, and I just hadn't watched much of The Simpsons at all. I was kind of a bit too young for it in its 90s heyday, and by the time I was in middle school, a lot of my friends cared about Family Guy, not The Simpsons. Sure, I'd probably seen a stray recent episode here or there, but it was really the movie that made me want to go back and give the show a shot. And I loved it. Rewatching The Simpsons seasons 5 through 8 was one of the very first things I did when lockdown happened last year. Those first 10 years or so are some of my favorite seasons of TV ever made, something I can revisit over and over again. But what about going back to the movie itself? Well, despite loving it in theaters, and even having a lot of fond memories of the video game that released alongside it, it's not a movie that I've rewatched many times since. So I was really afraid that going back to it now, knowing just how good the show was at the height of its creative powers, I'd be super disappointed. But here's the thing, I found out I kind of still love this movie. No, it's not perfect, and there are some problems that I have with it from a Simpsons fan perspective. But for the most part, this still feels like a really funny movie that at least deserves to be in the conversation alongside the Golden Age. And I think the reason for that is pretty simple. Early on, the choice was made by Fox to hire back as many great Simpsons talents as they could. While some key figures, like Conan O'Brien, Brad Bird, Sam Simon, and my favorite showrunners that the show ever had, Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein, didn't return, the team they ended up assembling was no joke. Sure, you had current Simpsons head Al Jean and creator Matt Groening, who you'd expect. But you also had serious heavy hitters, like director David Silverman, who had directed so many classic episodes, my favorite of his probably being Krusty Gets Cancelled. Writers Mike Scully, Mike Reiss, Matt Selman, the list goes on. They even got the reclusive and rarely photographed John Swartzwelder back, and for my money, that guy wrote more truly great episodes of the show than anyone. These were a lot of the people that were responsible for the success of the show in the first place. And for many of them, it was the last time they would work in the Simpsons universe. Which, at least to me, kind of makes this film feel like a true series finale. The kind that Fox and now Disney keep denying the poor Simpsons family. But I should probably just get into the actual movie, which starts with a family going to see the Itchy and Scratchy film and Homer mocking us for paying to see something in theaters that we could have seen at home for free. It's a pretty funny gag, and it helps that the Itchy and Scratchy segment is actually really good, playing off of like presidential biopics. Then we get to the plot of the film, which in many ways is structured like a Simpsons episode, where the first act follows one thing, in this case Homer getting a pig, before it wildly veers off into a much bigger storyline. And let me tell you, the world had Spider Pig fever back in 2007. According to the producers, test audiences loved the Spider Pig joke, so the marketing leaned into it hard. The joke really felt inescapable that year. And you know what? As far as comedic premises go, you could do a lot worse than Homer Gets a Pig. While of course I remember that song, there was actually a lot of smaller jokes that I'd totally forgotten about. Just dumb stuff that I really loved, like Homer jumping into the car and expecting the pig to drive after he dumps the silo into the lake. Speaking of the lake though, I should probably touch on that aspect of the movie. In an early scene, the band Green Day begs the people of Springfield to care about the environment before getting booed and then killed in the lake as the pollution in the water eats away at their barge. As a setup for the movie, the polluted lake is fine, but I will say how the film uses Green Day is a bit too much like modern Simpsons. There's not really any Green Day specific jokes or anything, no sly or cutting commentary on the band itself. The joke is mostly just, hey, it's the band Green Day but as Simpsons characters, and here they are playing the theme song. Now, this is a really long lost battle at this point, but I tend to like Simpsons guest stars a lot more when they're playing someone within the Simpsons universe, like Kelsey Grammer playing Sideshow Bob, or even Johnny Cash as the Coyote Spirit Guide in Season 8. Having non-actor celebrities play themselves, like that awful recent Elon Musk appearance, is usually the opposite of what I want from the show. But to be fair to this film, they're really only in this one scene, so I don't think it's a major issue. What I have a bit more of an issue with is Colin, Lisa's Irish love interest, who is just barely a character, which might have been fine if Lisa had more to do in the movie overall. For a film that touches on the environment so much, she doesn't actually have that much to do outside of the first half. I think the film makes a very calculated choice to focus mostly on their two most popular characters, Bart and Homer. Which I'm mostly fine with, actually. I love Bart and Homer. But if they're gonna have most of the spotlight, I think this Colin character's screen time should have been given to more beloved characters who don't get much time to shine in the film, like Moe or Smithers. I don't want to sound too negative though, because I really do think these early scenes in Springfield has the joke writing firing on all cylinders. I especially like Grandpa's religious revelation in the church and that scene in the car afterwards. Homer being really happy that they got a free rug out of it will never not be funny to me. Shortly after, we're introduced to the villains of the movie, and this actually seems to be kind of controversial among fans. We have comedy legend Albert Brooks returning as a villain, but not as Hank Scorpio, who he really memorably played in Season 8. Instead, he's Russ Cargill, the head of the EPA and the real power behind President Arnold Schwarzenegger. Honestly, I think Cargill is underrated by Simpsons fans. He's got his fair share of great moments, like letting himself get distracted by Cletus's finger trick, or his really quick and funny line about actually owning the company that built the dome he put over Springfield. Now, would a movie about Scorpio and like Mr. Burns teaming up have been a little bit more exciting to fans on paper? Probably, but revisiting classic one-off characters like Scorpio is really tricky, and I'm happy that writers just created something new instead. The President Schwarzenegger stuff I'm less into, it just feels so 2007. It's also definitely a case of the movie not wanting to alienate any new viewers. Like, they have an Arnold in the Simpsons universe, and his name is Rainier Wolfcastle. I wish they had just used him, honestly, because I think the same joke would have landed. They use Wolfcastle a lot, and it's not like the actor he's referencing was ever subtle in the first place. It also would have made the White House scenes feel a bit less dated today.
Can save the Earth.
Okay.
Get the Simpsons game for your NES from Acclaim.
The idea of Springfield being trapped under a giant dome is just a great one though. It has so much comedic potential, and it feels like an event that's big enough for a Simpsons movie, separating it from most episodes. In terms of scope, I think it's really only beaten by the Who Shot Mr. Burns two-parter. And it doesn't disappoint. While the focus is definitely more on the family, they find funny moments for so much of the extended cast, like Moe's bar being stolen out from under him, or Frank's super drill being just outside the dome. Also, I love that guy who just gets immediately crushed. He was a great one-scene character. The scene where the mob converges on the Simpsons house to kill Homer is a really good one, and it's more visually ambitious than the show usually has the budget to pull off. But it's when the family escapes to Alaska that the movie really shifts focus, and I'm a little torn on it. On one hand, I like a lot of the jokes here, like Bart drawing over their wanted poster so a family that looks just like his doodle gets arrested. But on the other, Homer and Marge marriage trouble stories are just a really tough sell at this point. Watching it back in 2007, I thought it really worked, but coming to it now as a Simpsons fan, it's easy to feel like this is a repeat of something we've already seen many times. Homer and Marge had been through every possible marriage problem at this point, but the movie does try its best to sell it, and I think it mostly succeeds. Like the scene of Marge taping over their wedding video, something she ran through a burning house to get earlier in the movie, actually works really well. Modern Simpsons has a hard time grappling with the emotional side of the characters that the early seasons often did so well, just because there's not much left to do. So it often treats the family as just joke dispensing machines, which is definitely not what they were when the show was at its best. So I like that they tried to keep that intact in the film, even though it feels like a well they've maybe gone back to one too many times. Another story in that vein that I actually think works really well is Bart starting to look up to Flanders as a father figure. The Flanders family has some great stuff here. I can't do the line delivery any justice, but Ned telling Todd that he wishes he didn't have the devil's curly hair is just one of those classic Flanders moments in my mind that I always assume is from like a season 6 episode, only to remember that it's from this movie. Anyway, after the Alaska segment, things wrap up back in Springfield with this big third act set piece that I actually really like. Homer and Bart riding the motorcycle around the dome while trying to throw the bomb is the perfect balance of completely goofy and ridiculous, and a scene that's actually exciting and has some stakes. I'm often critical of the animation in modern Simpsons because I think it's lost a lot of its cel-drawn personality from those early years. But this kind of has the best of both worlds. It's widescreen and HD while still being really fluid and not feeling stiff like the show so often can now. I also think the film does a good job of having some winking fan service while not making it annoying at all. Things like the crashed ambulance next to the gorge are nice nods to classic episodes while never feeling in your face or self-congratulatory. I feel like Simpsons fans are often harsh on this movie for not measuring up to the very, very best of the show. And I understand that, but even on rewatch, I thought this was just a really great time. It was exactly what I needed in 2007 to get me into the show, and I think it stood the test of time as a worthwhile Simpsons story in its own right. And as the show limps on through the years, it represents the last time that so many of the Simpsons greats came together for one final story. Maybe someday we will get that sequel that Maggie mentions at the end, and they'll try to get the team back together again. But for me, this was both a great introduction to Springfield, and has grown to be a really solid goodbye to that world as well.
Wait, boy! Your hour's not up yet!
Sorry, man. But nobody better lay a finger on my Butterfinger.
Okay, so in the spirit of Homer Simpson, I want to recommend something that made me really hungry. The documentary Pizza: A Love Story. It's a really well-made doc that takes a look at the pizza industry from restaurants that are actually trying to make it well, not just fast. Of course, CuriosityStream also has documentaries on nature, science, tech, the list goes on. They have thousands of titles, so there's always something new to find. But really, that's just half the package, because in this same bundle, you're also getting Nebula, a